Hi, thanks for joining me today. Last week we discussed the importance of checking your doctor's credential and board certification, and I said I had something important I was going to discuss today, and I've broken it into two sessions. Today we'll be talking about the importance of getting a copy of your medical records, and next week about the ramifications of clerical errors. And I think I have some lights glaring behind me, so I apologize for that if I have some light shining behind. Now, why is it so important to get a copy of your medical records? If you have an error in your medical records at one office, that error is going to travel to other facilities in today's world of electronic medical records. So you want to get that error fixed as soon as you can. Also, if you're applying for life, medical, or disability coverage, they may have pre-existing condition limitations. And that can come into play. Suppose, for example, a few months ago you hurt your right knee, but the notes mistakenly say it was your left knee. And then you get coverage, and later in the year you really do have a problem with your left knee. The company can try to deny coverage, saying it's pre-existing. And you try to tell them, no, that was really my right knee that had the problem, not the left knee. And now you have to deal with all that. So how do you get a copy of the notes? Well, some offices have what they call a patient portal, as you may already be aware of, where online you can access many of your medical records and lab test results and so forth. But if not, just ask your specific doctor's office who you want the notes from, what their procedure is, and likewise hospital if you had treatment there or certain surgery there. Just follow their procedures, and state laws vary in this. And I don't think you'll have too much trouble. Years ago, patients were a little nervous about getting notes because some doctors years ago would get very defensive about it. They wanted to know why you wanted the notes, if you're trying to be your own doctor or were you going to sue them. But these days, it's a much smoother process and much more accepted, pretty much standard procedure, so I don't think you'll have too much trouble. Now, how long does a doctor's office or hospital have to respond to your requests for the notes? State laws vary with this. Now, last week I called the Arizona Legislative Council to check in Arizona what the law is here, and there's no specific number of days per se that a doctor's or hospital facility has to get back to you, but they do have to respond in what's considered a reasonable time frame. And they will set the standards for that, and they must follow them. So just ask your doctor's office what the procedures are. Now, I also asked the Legislative Council how long in Arizona the doctors have to keep the notes. And they said for adults, 6 years, and children had other guidelines, and even some specialists like acupuncturists, there were other guidelines. So state laws can vary on that as well. Now, what are some of the errors we might find in these notes? Well, you'd be surprised what you can find. I'm going to give you some examples of what I found, but keep in mind that errors in notes is widespread. So it's not just my situation, and I've been to some of the finest doctors and hospitals in the country, and these things just happen. I've talked to many patients over the years. I used to run a support group. I've been a mentor for ovarian cancer for 20 years. I've met many patients in waiting rooms and physical therapy rooms, and patients get talking, and it's shocking some of the stories you can find about errors in the notes, and especially how they can impact one's disability application, and it is quite astonishing. So I urge you to check your notes. Now, in my case, an entire patient's electronic record was stuck in my file, and there were paragraphs, it was about this long, of information about this woman's heart condition. Now, it had my name on it, but it was completely her file. So if I had suddenly had to go to the hospital on emergency, that record most likely would have traveled there, and that could have had dire consequences for me because I did not have her heart problem. I have seen in my notes a broken arm listed. I never had a broken arm. Kidney disease, I never had. Wrong foot marked for surgery. Prescriptions I never took. I saw problems with my mother's notes when she was alive, problems with my husband's notes, and more recently, just a few weeks ago, suddenly my form at the doctor's office said I was a veteran. I'd never been a veteran. Someone else I know, suddenly they became a smoker when they hadn't smoked. So all these types of things can happen. Now your notes may be fine, but please check because it's very important to get the errors corrected if there are any. And these electronic medical records can be difficult to decipher sometimes. I find them much more complex than the old handwritten notes. Years ago, it was just trying to read a doctor's handwriting. Now it's trying to figure out what the heck these electronic notes are getting at. And sometimes it might grab information from a prior visit, kind of lock it into the current visit, and it can get very confusing, and even some of the doctors I've talked to have trouble straightening it out, but I still urge you to get them. The other thing I just want to bring up is in a prior video I talked about the way the future would be more of this thing called nuance I talked about, which is a machine in the background taking notes as opposed to your own doctor taking them. And I'm really curious how this is going to play out and how accurate those notes are going to be. So we'll have to see as time plays out. So thanks for joining me today, and I truly hope you will join me next Friday because I have a lot to talk about, the ramifications of clerical error. So I hope to see you then. Thanks for joining me. Bye.